So first of all, I want to thank everybody for joining, as Amine did. We've got 3 great panelists today and also some of their recent work to share with you guys. First up, we got Kristen Hosack from Saatchi. She is a senior music supervisor there and longtime buddy in advertising. Next, we've got Jennie Armon. She is an EP and music supervisor at Found Objects. Hi, Jennie. And finally, we've got Fabian Halabou, and he is a partner and music supervisor at Sneak Attack Music out in Detroit. So welcome, everybody. I wanted to give everyone a little moment to introduce themselves, talk a little bit about kind of what you're up to, and after that, we'll kind of get in a discussion about what drew each of you into the advertising and marketing world, because there are many different disciplines of music supervision, and advertising and marketing is one of them, and it's quite a bit different than, say, film or TV. So, Kristen, why don't you lead off? You go first.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me. Excited to be here today. As Todd mentioned, I'm the music supervisor at Saatchi and Saatchi. I oversee the Dallas and LA offices, and I primarily work on the Toyota North America and Toyota Global Olympics campaigns, in addition to some pro bono work that we've been doing. I can talk a little bit about my journey to this position. It's kind of unique. I started actually in college radio as a DJ, and then worked my way up to music director. And then my senior year, I was actually writing my thesis on the effects of the internet on the music industry, totally dating myself. This is the early days of Napster and torrent sites. And I got a job interning at a label, MCA Records, no longer, RIP, and got a job sort of serendipitously working for a concert promoter in San Francisco. Bill Graham Presents, the biggest West Coast promoter. And I worked there for 5 or 6 years before moving to LA, and then tried to find my way back into music. So I sort of happened at Saatchi, actually working in a different position, saw an opportunity to create this job for myself, that there was a need in the agency, and was really lucky that I was able to pitch myself with my music background and get to start the music department about 8 years ago. So I've been doing it ever since, and it's a dream.
Very cool. And as a fellow college music director, congratulations. And you do some work with KCRW as well, right? There's a little bit of a relationship there.
I actually just hung my volunteer hat. I was working with Garth Trinidad for the last 12 years. And my agreement with him was that when he left the station, I would as well. And so that just happened. I miss being there a lot. It's an amazing station. Yeah. Still a member.
Truly is a force in the music industry as well. Okay, great. Well, let's talk to Jennie right now. Maybe introduce yourself, and you can talk a little bit about how you got into the music and marketing side of things.
Sure. I was one of those weird kids that put little sticky notes on all my CDs with little time codes of things that belonged in film. But I was actually DJing parties in Virginia. And I moved to New York, and I was working at an agency, and everybody's like, "Oh, you like music?" All the money I was spending was just going to concerts. Probably $10,000 I was making that year. And they're like, "Oh, you like music? Do you want to help us find some music for new business pitches?" And I was like, "What is that?" They're like, "It's just kind of like DJing." So I started picking out songs for new business pitches, and I just loved it. And then I quit, and I went to a music company just to watch, answer the phones. I didn't care. I just wanted to see how the sausage was made, and just slowly started building up clients, understanding how music was placed in advertising. Went from an assistant to a production, and so on. And now I'm at Found Objects, which I've been there for about 5.5 years. Employee number 3, and now we're up to 9. So it's been really fun to kind of see this industry morph into something even bigger.
Amazing. And Found Objects is in New York, just so everybody knows. And they do both original music and music supervision. I came to know them through the original music, but now they're doing more music supervision. So Fabian, tell us about yourself and your journey.
Sure. My name is Fabian. I'm Detroit-based, which is a little unique in this industry. Not a lot of music supervisors in the Midwest and specifically Detroit, but I kind of got my start first, as a kid that wanted to do anything in the music industry. So unpaid internships in publicity and journalism and radio and, record labels and what have you. But I also played music, and around the time that I was in a band, I tried my hand at composing for commercials, and it never turned into more than just a side hustle. But around that time, I did see a job opening at an agency here in Detroit. There was one music producer in-house at an agency, John Mosier at Donor, and he was looking for an assistant. So I ended up applying and luckily got the job, and that was the start of my journey about 10 years ago. So I worked, inside of the agency for a few years. And then after that, I worked for a vendor for about 6 years. And now I'm doing a little bit of both. I'm back at Donor freelancing, but also taking on other client work.
Cool. And Donor is in Detroit. They're an agency that also has cars and many other clients. One thing I'd like to point out is that one of the efforts in putting this panel together was to get people from kind of all over the U.S. We have representatives from LA. I currently am in San Francisco, New York by way of Colorado with Jennie, and then Fabian, who's in Detroit. And, it's just to show that not all the music supervision world is based in just New York and LA, that there are music supervisors in Detroit, in Chicago, and of course, all over the world. So let's take a moment and talk about the kind of current state of advertising. When we started to do this panel, I was like, I'm not talking about the pandemic. We keep talking about the pandemic, but the pandemic is still a very much a force in what we're doing, the tone of the work and the projects that we're on. I'm my fourth thank you to our healthcare heroes video. That's just me, but let's talk about it. The basics about what's going on, what our clients are looking for, be that genres or tone, and hopefully a little glimpse into where we're going in the future. And I'll let if you want to just jump in, you guys, whoever wants to go first and tell your particular take on things.
Who's going to unmute first? Who's going to unmute first?
Get on
All right.
it.
I guess it's me. Obviously every industry is different, but I think largely what I've noticed, at least for my clients, is that creating authentic, immediate emotional connections between brands and consumers now more than ever is important, because we're all experiencing and living through a pandemic. And that plays out in a lot of ways. It means that maybe music budgets are a lot bigger because brands want to spend money on talent and music and production value to really create amazing work. What it also means is that largely everybody who's on the agency and client side are working double, triple time. So what I've found too is that I've been challenged in ways of feeling like I'm communicating in a timely manner with people, and sometimes that bums me out. So I just wanted to say this, that, one takeaway I want everyone to learn here is that, the hustle, which we'll get into, and like how to reach out to people, continue to do that. Just understand that if people aren't getting back to you right away, that it's not because they don't care, they don't want to connect with you about your art. It's that they're fielding 1,000 requests every minute, and I think, understanding that and prioritizing all of our mental health is very important. So continue doing that.
Great.
Yeah. And it didn't slow down anything. In fact, I think the first week or two, I was sitting with the owners being like, oh my God, what if we have to lay off our staff? And then it exploded because everybody was a captive audience to advertising, to commercials. They couldn't go anywhere. Mm-hmm. And so I think a lot of our clients were just like, all right, pedal to the metal. Also, a lot of things were renewal based. And they were just like, well, we can't shoot it, so we're just going to renew it. And that was a really big boom for us as well. But we had to hire staff, and none of us took a vacation for quite a while. So we survived, knock on wood.
Yeah, there certainly was a lot of I'm working from kind of situations where you're in paradise, but you're still working 60 hours a week. Yeah, I totally agree. I guess too, let's maybe we can do another round, but talk about genres and things that people are looking for. So Fabian, what's your take?
I think there was a trend to have these sort of heartfelt stories for a long time. It wasn't as, advertising wasn't pushing the boundaries as much. For a little while, it was trying to tell heartfelt stories, trying to be authentic, trying to set that tone. And with that came, I think, a lot of volume of work too. It wasn't just, I know we're going to talk about this in a little bit, but, it wasn't just like licensed music or composed music. It was a combination of everything, but a lot of production music, only because we had to keep up with the volume and budgets were compromised. Productions were compromised. It was hard to shoot. It was hard to, make sure that, everybody was doing everything safely. So there was a bit of that.
And just so you guys know, I saw that question from Samantha, which Angela answered. The renewal based just means that they have something already running and they would renew that music as opposed to create new content that needs new music. So there was quite a bit of keeping the old messages running during this because they couldn't do it. And to Fabian's point, production music is, in case you don't know, is usually library music, affordable music that you can get, not necessarily from name brand artists. And I would say the libraries and also the stock footage industry has done very well during this because of the sort of inability to go out and do a full up live action shoot. So just a couple of pieces of information. I think because of that, at least for me, I got acquainted with library resources that I had never tapped before. And it was, there's some amazing content out there, some amazing music that you can get a hold of in libraries, as well as, of course, going direct to artist. Let me see. So what do you guys, I keep touching on this, but what kind of tone? I definitely about 3 months ago worked on a lot of We're Back kind of content, and now I'm currently doing a thank you to our frontline workers thing. It's gone back again, but aside from the emotional piano, where do you think things are going, and what have you seen? So,
I'm glad you mentioned the emotional piano. Like literally everyone was allergic to piano for a very long time. We're like, it's not the piano's fault. Yeah. It's just a lonely piano. But no, I think like we definitely slid into like really optimistic things, just like laying it on real thick. Also very relatable content as far as just like, with lyrical content, people just wanting to like latch on to something really quickly and make it a little more like a little more obvious, is what I've noticed.
Yeah, I would say for stuff, the stuff I've been working on, it's been like very big, recognizable music, immediately connected to the audience because they know and love it, or it's a voice that they recognize. So yeah, I'm like huge. I've never spent this much money on music. I'll just put it that way. I've spent more money in the last 18 months than I have in the last 5 years.
So do a little call out. What big artists?
Like last year we did like Elvis, Aloe Black. Then I just recently did a huge female, and I can't talk about it because it's not live yet. It's going to start airing in 2 weeks. If you watch football, just watch that. Big, like it's spacing me right now because I'm on the spot, but just
don't worry. I will say I've personally had clients that have just come out of nowhere and we've gone for a massive song and stuff that was 10 times the budget of the music that we were going to use, So like I put the White Stripes on something recently, and I would not have guessed in a million years that they would, number one, choose to pursue it, but then also pay the licensing fees. So
there was also like this sweet spot, which is a very weird phrase for this context, but there was a sweet spot for when artists were like, oh no, I am not going to be able to tour.
Yeah.
They were just saying yes.
Yes.
Everything.
Yep.
Yeah. The opportunity to work with artists to do original music was was wide open.
Yeah.
There were huge artists that were just like, I'm just sitting around, let's do something. So, so that, you know, for what it was worth, it was pretty interesting there for a little bit. So, you know, if you guys feel we covered this, I would say that kind of getting back to the relatable thing, that people want music that is instantly locking on with their prospective audience. And I'm finding that it's a lot of organic stuff, you know, easily accessible, like almost, you know, simple piano, simple guitar, lots of lyrics. There's been a big need for lyric content that relates to the story, to tell the story, which wasn't always the case. So I think we can, if you guys are okay, we can play some of the recent work. And I was going to have each of you do a very short lead in just to talk about what the piece is and who it's for and where it ran. And then we can follow up after we played it. So Kristen, you're up first.
So I'm going to take back everything I just said about big recognizable music, because the spot I'm going to show you is part of our Global Olympics campaign. And for this entire body of work, we created 5 spots. Actually, 2 years ago, we created them for the 2020 Winter Olympics, which then got pushed a year. So lucky for music, everything that we did was scored and worked for hire. So nothing needed to be renegotiated with any of the music, but of course, all the talent and everything else needed to be renegotiated to push it out a year. But the spot I'm going to share with you is called Upstream. It debuted on the Super Bowl this year, and it's been running all throughout both the Olympics and the Paralympics. It's about a Paralympic swimmer. She's amazing. It's a true story. And what's interesting about the score is that we were demoing as we were doing our post-production, and you'll see that there's a lot of visual effects in the spot. So when we were working against a rough cut, it was really difficult because the moments we were trying to hit were being created as we were trying to create the score. So what that meant was just a lot of fine tuning and revisions to get the music into a really good place, which you'll see on the spot.
That's awesome. So I think you actually gave quite a bit of information about the piece, but it's beautiful. And we have a number of emotional pieces and stories to share with you guys today, but that was great. I don't know. Do you have anything to add?
I was going to say that it was scored by the Elements. They're in LA. Yeah, I want to give them props because they worked really hard to help us get to this point, and they're also really proud of it. So, yeah, I mean, how can you beat that? Sorry, your guys' spots are also going to be amazing. I don't know.
How can you beat that, last. Jennie?
You guys get to
Good
follow
luck.
that. Good luck.
So as we get in, we have several pieces of original music that were created under the watch and the guidance of music supervisors today. Some of them are covers, some of them were completely original. Just so you guys know, it's a little different today. So I think Fabian, you were going to go next. Is that right?
Sure. Yeah. It is kind of fun to talk about, the different ways that we can, I guess, solve music problems, whether it's with composed music, licensed music, a combination, whatever we can, based on what we have in front of us. What's the creative ask? What's the budget? For this one, there were no budgetary concerns. They ended up licensing a Beatles song. So I came into this project. It's through Nike. Nike does have an in-house music team, and they also have agency partners globally. But the creatives had landed on a couple songs that they really liked. One of them being the track that you're going to hear on the spot, which is Blackbird. But when I came in, there was an opportunity to pitch other music to see if they would license something else that might hit the target a little bit, that would have been closer to what the creatives stateside wanted versus what their partners in Shanghai wanted to do. But they ended up licensing Blackbird. So I helped by pulling in some artists and composers to demo that song, and the spot is where we ended up.
Another beautiful spot. So Fabian, right before they started, I was going to ask you, so did they come to you with the license the publishing already dealt with, and you just worked on the cover?
I think they were working on it at the time. They try to clear things as, their clients put those requests through. Whether or not that goes final is a different story. But, the concept was that this was supposed to be a take on, Kobe's documentary, Dear Basketball, when he retired. Yeah. This is China's love letter to Kobe. titled Dear Kobe. But what they were trying to do was put a really impactful song on it. I know that there was a little bit of hesitancy because, the song originally was, civil rights themed song. So conflating that with, the story of Kobe Bryant was something that they were careful about. But, in the end, it won out. It's just, too ubiquitous and too big of a song for them to pass up on. And I guess because it's Nike, they have not everybody gets to license the Beatles, so they succeeded in obtaining that license. And I know that they also, this is a fun part of the process. They reached out to, several composers and artists, prominent artists, well-known artists to work on this piece. And in the end, what they landed on was composed by Norman Kim, who's a super talented artist, composer, mostly in the commercial space, but he does, his own he's got his own career as a songwriter and really impressive work. And for him to beat out some prominent names in the music industry was something that was not lost on them.
Wow, that's great. And I understand there's also there's a version out there. It was done in English and in Mandarin as well. Is that right?
Yeah, this aired in China, so I shared the English version, but there is a version in Mandarin. If I don't know how geo-gated it is, but you'll probably find it if you.
Yeah, see if it escapes China. Okay, cool. And then Jennie, you're last up, and this is really special. So tell us a little bit more about it.
Yeah. So this in particular was out of the stuff that we've worked on. It was very multifaceted. First, YouTube came to us looking just for like artists to pitch. They wanted 2 different artists to cover the Kinks' Strangers. And it was going to be for Super Bowl, for a YouTube trailer that was going to be about, I don't know if anybody watched in 2010, it was called Life in a Day, produced by Ridley Scott, but everybody shot at the same exact moment in 2010. And then this was 10 years later. So this was July 25th, 2020, where everyone shot right on the same exact moment all over the world. And it was a trailer for that film, and also announcing YouTube Originals as a platform. So we were thinking of, we organized this pitch deck as far as like different tiers of artists, well-known, unknown, pricing, location, gender, styles, stats for social media, everything. And from there, with pricing and combination and availabilities, we ended up grabbing Black Pumas with Lucius. And they then created a cover. I did all the talent negotiation as far as how much they would charge. And as far as the licensing goes, one of the people on my team, my head of production, Matt Nelson, worked to get the licensing approved for publishing as well simultaneously, because we had a very short timeline. And then once the band created the cover, both people sang, we also orchestrated behind the scenes shoot. And then finally, once we needed to do cut downs of that track, my composing team made the arrangement of that, which was a 60-second, which you'll see. But the full length song was actually released on Spotify, so you can listen to it. It's so great. And
Awesome.
Yeah, I know everything is emotional today with our response.
No. Oh, goodness.
I failed to mention that arrangement was created by our creative director, Ben Marshall, who's an amazing composer. And it actually won the Silver Clio Award for the best use of film, best use of music in a film. So that was really cool.
Yeah, it was a really great piece. I remember when that came out. It was awesome. So we've reviewed a little work, a recent work. We've talked a little bit about kind of what's going on in the current state of music supervision for ads and marketing. I wanted to pivot a little bit and talk to all the music supervisor hopefuls out there who want to work in advertising and marketing. And then we will also discuss for the rights holders out there and the music creators, how to get your music to music supervisor. So let's first talk about how supervisors out there can get into doing work in advertising and marketing. A little bit of it relates to your own personal story, I'm sure, and maybe you can talk about kind of what it's like out there right now. And we can go in any order you want. So, Kristen, you're first up.
Sorry, my internet's like being crazy. So if I go off camera, it's just to savor this moment. So how to get into music supervision? It's a great question. I get asked that question all the time. It is a really unique space in that there aren't a lot of what we'll call in-house music supervisor jobs, meaning people like me who work at an ad agency or at a brand. So a lot of what's happening in the space in the last decade is that music companies like Found Objects and Jennie and Fabian also are working either freelance or they're working under a music house that does both original music and provides support for music supervision to their clients who don't have internal music teams. So getting into it, I think, is just understanding the space, really, like how music supervision works and how clients and brands bring in people to help them with music, and getting to know companies. If you're younger and you want to start at the bottom floor and move up, like getting internships or getting involved in programs that, can provide mentorship. I know my mentee's on. Hey, Rashad. So I think there's, just really understanding the space would be my 2 cents.
Okay, cool. And just to pause for a second. So I think, at least in my mind, and you guys can let me know if I'm incorrect here, there's sort of 3 paths. There's advertising agency path, which myself and I think Jennie and Kristen went down first. There is direct with brand and Fabian as well. Direct with brand, which is maybe being in-house at, say, a Nike or Adidas or a YouTube or somebody else who is in need of music and needs someone to find it. And then there is a vendor pathway, which might be your music house or working with specifically with a music supervisor. So those are 3 pathways that I can think of. There might be more, but Fabian, what do you think? How can people kind of get a foothold, get the foot in the door?
I think everything that you mentioned is viable. I don't know how easy it is to go from nothing to becoming a music supervisor that helps, service brands or agencies. But understanding the space that you're working in is super important. I knew for a while that Detroit had, there was one music producer here who I ended up working with. There was another one who I ended up working for later, because he also switched from agency to vendor side. And his story is that he had created the position himself. He had, it was with another agency here in Detroit, and he was doing something else for them and sort of put himself out there as somebody that could do this or help out with that. And they were open to it, and ended up being something that led him down his own career path. So, those are all viable, but just sort of like getting yourself in there and understanding the basics of the industry and the ins and outs, and, the basics of licensing and music rights is a great start. And once you're in there, you start to figure out like where your space is. Do you want to work for a label and pitch to music supervisors, or do you want to be on the other side and service agencies and brands? But getting in on the ground level, wherever it is super important. You just have to have an understanding of the industry that you're working in.
Jennie, what's your take?
Yeah, I think there are definitely 2 different approaches. Like agency side, when I was on agency side, it's a different, you're closer to the brands. But on the flip side, you literally can't run away from the brands. You have to find a solution. When you're working on more of like a independent freelance or production type role or a smaller company, you can say no. And that is powerful. But I think both are really fun and cool. For my path, leaving the agency world to start at a smaller company, I really was able to observe different roles and make relationships in the business. And when you're working at a smaller company, as weird as it sounds, actually your relationships are everything. And actually, it shouldn't sound weird, because our relationships are everything all the time. So, with certain films that I wanted to work on, I just would start following directors, not in a weird stalker way, but just really staying close to their career and seeing, oh man, they ended up in Sundance. Like, look at this. They're going to, Tribeca, whatever, and just touch base. and follow up. When people reach out to me, I always recommend putting together something called a hypothetical reel, which a lot of composers do, but actually for music supervision, it kind of helps me like get in people's heads to see, oh, what would you do if you put that music on to picture on an Apple spot? Like what would you do? How would you do it differently? What song would work better? What would it complement more? Like if you could do it. And so that's been really cool to just like get in people's heads. And then also taking like a legal contract reading course, is really helpful, because if you are kind of trying to do it more independent, knowing what to look for with those contracts, you just have to protect your clients so much. So yeah, that's what I'd recommend. Just like being a people person, whether you want to or not, savoring those relationships, staying in touch, and considering working at a smaller company if you want to kind of see how it all works.
Yeah. And I think it's important too to point out that go to where the action is, where the people have a need, specifically for music or for your help with music. I think, our stories are sort of similar in that we all did some time at agencies. And I didn't go there to an agency originally to be the music person. I was just a music person that happened to be at an agency. And like Jennie, I was DJing and doing mixtapes. And then the mixtapes became things I did for brands. And the mixtapes were for their ads or for their pitch videos. And it developed like that. And I was very naive about contracts and all this stuff. I just wanted to get my friends' bands money, basically. So look for that, and look for who's doing great work. There are certain clients that are, or brands, I guess I should say, or brand categories that are absolute music monsters. Car brands in particular. I know. Jennie and Fabian are buried in this, but it wasn't until the agency I was at got a car brand that the need for what I did, which was finding cool music, went absolutely crazy. And I got my title as agency music supervisor. But now it's not just cars, it's consumer electronics, specifically mobile. There's quite a need in the insurance sector, with all the brands kind of having a advertising media war. And if you gravitate towards the people who are doing that work, that there will be plenty of work to be done, and that could help. So try to go where the work's being done, and find people that you admire, to try to work with. So I guess if we're good there's a couple, I don't know if we're going to get to a Q&A, but I think we should pivot over to talking about people who are rights holders and artists getting their music into the hands of music supervisors. And there's several ways you can do this. Some are more efficient than others. Kristen, I guess you're just first in line every time.
I'll be your girl. I like to talk. It's fine.
There we go.
That's a good question, because I get asked that question a lot. And I see a couple people have direct messaged me in the chat, so I'm going to answer your questions too here. For me, it's a little bit difficult because I represent such a huge brand in advertising. Primarily, the biggest legal claim in our business is music claims. So what that means is that when I get music, it has to be in a really formalized way. So I get emails, I'm on newsletters for major labels and publishers or sync companies that I have a relationship with. And when artists try to reach out to me directly, if they're not established or signed, it's very difficult for me to engage, because I'm unable to listen to the music unless I've specifically asked for it. So my recommendation is, if you are unrepresented, look for ways that you can become represented somehow, even if it's through a non-exclusive deal with a company who is willing to give you a profit share on the licensing. But what it does is it puts your music into the hands of a reputable company that then people like me know and trust. And it's a really direct line into the agencies. That's probably my biggest piece of advice, because we field these questions a lot. And this is just the situation for me at Saatchi, because I work for a really huge agency under a global umbrella, so it might be more conservative for me and the guardrails that I have. It may not be the same for the other people on the call, but that would that would probably be my advice, because we always want to hear the music. It's just sometimes we have to be a little bit more strategic about how it happens so that we're protecting the rights and interests of our clients, et cetera.
Yeah, and just so everyone knows, the representation that Kristen's talking about is a sync rep. So someone who would be able to help an artist through their contacts and their relationships with music supervisors to get the artist's music into the hands of a music supervisor or a brand. And specifically, Kristen, when you're talking about the legal things, this is a big deal. There is a certain amount of exposure that brands get from listening and bringing in pieces of music that might not be on the level. I'm sure no one here on this panel would do that, but I personally, as an independent music supervisor, I'm sent things all the time, and I'm telling these rights holders, like, hey, there's a Beastie Boys sample on here. That's a Bob Dylan song, and these people don't always know that these things are in there, and that could be a disaster for myself, the brand, the artist, and everyone involved if one of these pieces of music gets put on something. Even if it's a $500 license, they could be sued for millions. So just be cool. Make sure you own your stuff. So yeah,
I want to elaborate on the sync rep, because I see people asking questions in the chat. So sync reps can be anybody from even like Jennie's company representing artists and pitching their music to their clients. It could be what we call third-party rep firms. So it's not a major label or publisher, but it's a company who reps on their behalf or who reps on the artist's behalf. So I might get a song pitched to me, the same song from like 4 different people in 4 different companies, because different people are pitching different parts of the song, right? Someone might be pitching one of the writers, someone might be pitching the master, someone might be pitching on behalf of the label. So there's like a lot of different ways you can get in, but you don't have to have any deal signed. You can also go through individual people. I think there are a few people on these calls who have individual companies and they represent artists and they can pitch music too. So, I mean, the way you attack it can be very easy and low level to like really high, and high level. So
yeah, and these are some trusted relationships that we have. So Fabian or Jennie, what's your take? How do you get music to the right people?
You want to go, Fabian?
I can go. I mean, everything that she said is pretty spot on. I would want to add that if there are any artists that are hopeful to do custom work in this space as well, do a little bit of research and find out what companies are out there and reach out to them and see what sort of criteria they're looking for onboarding composers, or what it would take to do a demo for them on spec or what have you, because those questions come up a lot as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for me, I similar to Kristen, we just get flooded a lot. It's nothing personal that we won't respond or we don't have time to respond. It's more just the influx. So I think personally, what I really like is when people take a look at the company that I work at Found Objects, and they look at what styles that we typically work on. And not to say we won't get an ask for a reggaeton spot, you know what I mean? But you can kind of see what style certain companies gravitate towards with their spots that at least they're showing. So I think doing some background research on that, I think also taking an interest on us as humans is really nice. Hey, Jennie, I saw your YouTube spot. That really touched me. Thanks so much. Here's my music. And also just following up. For me personally, I love people that follow up and just don't take it personal, and more of just a constant new content, here's a song I just created for this, or I just finished this and here's me rapping. Here's my SoundCloud link now. And yeah, just kind of switching it up and not taking it personal and not giving up.
Yeah. And I would say that the tone of your outreach is important, a friendly check-in's fine. A text to ask me if I checked an email that you sent yesterday that's a little borderline, calling a lot is I try to check emails, and that should be, unless we're actively on a project.
Calls just became really invasive. I don't know when that happened. I like calling people as my friends, but then when I get a phone call from someone I'm like, oh my God, how'd they get my number? And I forget my signature.
Exactly. So, let's break that down a little bit. So, of course, it is possible as an independent artist to get your music to supervisors if you do it correctly. Like use some of Jennie's tips. Getting your music represented by a sync rep is kind of jumping ahead. There's a price to pay for that, but the gain is that you could work with someone that we all really trust, and when they send us stuff, we know, number one, that the quality is usually really good. Like we're not going to get anything that isn't mixed right. We're not going to get anything that we can't license. The rights are sorted out usually when they send us something, and that is a lot of work for us. Scratching our heads. Another way to do things is to work with a music house to create original music, and that could be completely original. But a lot of it too is like Fabian did, is covers and reimagining of known tracks. And so if you're an independent artist, that might not be a bad thing to do. Is have a side project working on cool covers. Try to make them songs that we can license though. So no Springsteen, no artists who don't traditionally license. So what else? So
I was going to say one more thing, Fabian. I didn't want to cut you off though, but okay. I was going to say another tip, which is so like you think would be understood, but it's not, is that, if you do share music, always share a couple songs on a streamable link, nothing that people have to download. Make sure that your metadata is up to date. Make sure your contact information is on the song if somebody does choose to download it. Make sure all the samples you have in are cleared or in the process of being cleared. The business side of the music, that will really benefit you because, any of those things, because we're so busy, could just be a non-starter. Like if we open the song and we can't figure out how to contact you, we might just move on because we don't have time to figure it out, So I think, having your I's dotted and T's crossed with your files and how you share music is really important. And, getting up on hosting systems, like get a Disco account or get a Box account or, have your music readily available to share at any moment.
Yeah.
Also,
I was going to bring that.
I just wanted to add to that because yes, thank you so much, Kristen. Because yes, we need metadata and we also need a streaming link because otherwise, like literally, it shuts down our email, our files. But I will also say that sometimes we can't use lyrics because clients can't afford SAG payments or whatever, it's in a different language. And so if you have instrumental versions of those things, or even like vocal textures, like without words, but maybe like oohs and ahs, and that is really nice to have too.
So lyricless vocals. And Fabian, you're up next, but also I wanted to kind of get back to Kristen's point. Platforms are becoming increasingly important. Personally, I'm not endorsing anything, but personally I use Disco and it has absolutely changed the way I work. If you send me your stuff on Disco, I'm able to bring it right into my library and put it in my awesome stuff thing, as opposed to, SoundCloud, which may or may not have a download link, and I have to do all this stuff. So be considerate, and ask if you're going to send a playlist to somebody, see what platform they're using. It could really help your music actually be retained. So, Fabian, do you have anything to add?
No, just wanted to mention the instrumentals thing, having, mastered instrumentals on hand.
Yes.
In some cases stems if it's needed, but I think the instrumentals are pretty crucial, especially in advertising where there's tons of voiceover.
Yeah, and one important thing about what Fabian just said is mastered. They have to sound as good and at the same levels as your full mix. Otherwise, they're hard to work with, and it can't be used alone instantly. So,
I thought of one other thing, if I can add. Two things, just being ready. So like if we need, like we literally have an hour or two to clear something, make sure that if you recorded something with your buddy, that you guys have a ironclad contract between the two of you, even if it's just a piece of paper that you sign, whatever, that says this is 50% mine, 50% yours. Because once things start to like move quickly, people get weird. So like
Yeah.
figure all that out in the beginning. And also consider having a link ready. So if you somehow, if somebody does reach out to you, one of the three of us or someone else, to be like, hey, I need the instrumental for that, you have a link that you are ready to send right away.
Yeah. Agreed. So we're kind of around the time when we can start doing a Q&A. I'm just wondering if you guys had anything to ask and anything to add about, becoming a music supervisor, getting your music to music supervisors. If there's anything you feel that we didn't cover here. So I think we did pretty good. So yeah, cool. So let's see here. We were going to have a Q&A thing here, and let me check and see. Angela, did you have some stuff to share with us, or how would you like to do this? I've been kind of monitoring, but don't have anything in front of me.
Yeah, you've been answering as we go. If you have
Okay.
questions right now, they can drop in the chat here again.
Yeah, that would be great. If you guys do have questions and we can answer them, we'll do it on the fly here. I think too, one thing to point out while we're kind of waiting, examine the timing. If you're going, and this is a long shot, but if you're going for a Super Bowl spot, know that Super Bowl work really starts production in around September, maybe earlier, depending on what you're doing, and follows through until around mid-January, where if it goes past that, then it's some kind of freak out. But I've done a lot of Super Bowl work, and that's usually the timing. If you're doing stuff you want to get music in the holiday spot, well, holiday spots, people start thinking about them in June and July. And if you're going to share your holiday originals or covers, start thinking about doing it then. There are specific, and Kristen, Fabian, you guys could talk about the specific timings for auto because of new model releases and other kind of sales events that could have the auto industry going nuts, or consumer electronics shows. CES is always a big one. There's all kinds of content created around those. So just kind of notice what's happening. Back to school for clothing around September is also, and spring for clothing is also really important. So let's see here. Hey, John. So one question for Kristen. You mentioned SAG, which is Screen Actors Guild, talent union. And what do lyrics in particular have to do with SAG?
Oh, I think Jennie said that, but I can take a stab at it and then.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay. Do you want me to answer, Jennie? Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Yeah, I'll
Round table. Yeah.
So if a song is recorded under SAG, meaning like the singer is a member of SAG-AFTRA, and an agency like Saatchi, who is SAG signator, produces a union production in the United States, we have to pay reuse on that music. So vocals equal SAG payments. So if that's not something that's possible, instrumentals are used, because then you don't have to pay the vocalist reuse for their commercial. It works the same way if it's like royalties. If a song is on the radio, you get royalties. If a song's in a commercial, you get royalties. So payments are made to both SAG and the AFM. If anyone here is a composer, a member of AFM, if songs are recorded under the union jurisdiction, then they are, it's possible that they'll have to be, that payments will have to be made on union productions by signator entities. So sometimes if a commercial is filmed by a non-union agency or client in, let's say, Paris, then that might be an instance where SAG or AFM would not be paid. But otherwise it is. And again, it's reliant on how the song was recorded and what the artists are.
Yeah.
It can also change your life if you get SAG payments.
Yeah.
So good luck to everybody.
Yeah, I would point out that sometimes, depending on what the license is and what it's for, the license fee can be smaller than the end residual talent payments, depending on what the media buy is. It's one of these things. As a music supervisor, we're sort of exposed to this, and we can say, oh yeah, but at the end of the day, it's the client, because they're going to pay these fees based on their actual usage. And as music supervisors, we don't have any control over the media buy or any of that stuff. So it's a client thing. Let's see here. There was another question that popped up. So there was a question for Bradford Smith, and it was to me, but you guys can all take this. And it's, what advice would you have for a small agency who wants to work with a music supervisor? I think, Bradford, if you're a small agency and you're here, you're ahead of the game, because there's a tremendous talent pool that's even just on this call, or on this chat rather. And it's going out and finding someone who's doing the work that you really like, and reaching out. So let me know if you guys have anything to add to that.
We're always open. I mean, I know that I am always open to working with new clients and new projects. So don't be intimidated. You should reach out. Usually on our websites, we'll have contact information. But go ahead.
Oh, I would just say too, like, because you guys are, a small agency, don't think that we won't work with you. There are all kinds of levels of needs and businesses and brands, and I think most music supervisors would go for it just to establish a good relationship. Because hopefully your small agency will become a big agency. So.
Totally. And sometimes I'll just pick a project based on creative. Budget, of course, we have to pay people for their time. But if something is amazingly creative and cool, I don't know, it's worth it. So. Yeah,
exactly. And Angela did point out that there is a larger SAG and I believe maybe AFM panel coming up, which I am going to be watching because I find that stuff pretty fascinating and can always use an update on what's going on. Let's see here. On the topic of big recognizable music, do artists, writers get to have input on how much a spot runs with their music, i.e. a concern over burning the song out? For example, the Samsung ad with Imagine Dragons, great placement, but oh my God, that spot runs so much. I can't take hearing it anymore. Do you guys want to tackle this? Because I certainly have an answer for it. So.
I don't know that I've experienced it. I'm curious to know if you have. I mean, a lot of times I've experienced where artists will have, final creative approval, or, certain categories where they won't work. But, as far as, how often something runs, I'd like to know if anybody else has experienced that.
I definitely have, which is wild because it blows my mind. I'll just say one story. I had a really big band who might have just been mentioned in another commercial that you just said, who I wanted to license one of their songs, and they were releasing a new album, and they really wanted me to use their new single and not the song I wanted to license. And they really pushed for that new song, but it was not what we wanted. We wanted the other song. Sometimes bands will do that, especially if they have new music coming out. I understand. They want the new music in the big commercial. But when we pre-clear songs, we're being upfront about what the media plan is. So when we're negotiating the license, the length of the campaign is pretty explicitly detailed up front. And I've only had one other instance where a band requested to shorten our term. But honestly, with most brands, that's just a non-starter because, they're putting millions and millions, hundreds of millions of dollars in these campaigns. They're not going to accommodate, a band necessarily, unless it's like the Beatles or something. But yeah. What about you, Todd? And I heard you.
Jennie?
I was going to say there was a very high profile person that they just happened to have something else coming out at the exact same time. And so it wasn't about the money. It was just about their promotional plan. But
sure.
I think I just saw Remy Wolf as an example at Underground Music Showcase, and she exploded because of the Apple commercial. I don't think any up and coming artist is going to hate that type of exposure.
Yeah. I think, was it LP who had that big city group thing, the rock climbing? That was, for me, I was like, oh my God, that was one that was on too much. But SAG spot, and they renewed it probably, my God, 6-8 times. It was everywhere for years. And so I think LP did very well. Her music was brought to many, many, many people who would have never heard her music. And that was good. At the end of the day, I did wonder, sometimes you wonder how much this is going to hurt after everybody starts complaining about it and it becomes a meme. But but it's interesting. And also, just to get back to the question, the artists really don't have control over how much it runs. They have control, or they can agree to the term and the specific media. But if that client wants to spend 10,000 or 100 million on media, they don't really get access to that. I will say that their rights holders are getting a bit smarter in asking these questions. It's just most brands are not able to answer them because all of the media buys and everything are really nebulous until they figure out whether something is working or if there's a need for that ad to run more. So,
do you guys remember in like the early 2000s when you thought a band was a sellout when they had their song in a commercial? And now it's like the only way that they make money.
Yeah. We can talk about that for a second. I mean, that was right in the crosshairs, of my career. I was a super geeky like DJ and indie music kid. All my friends were in bands, and then the music industry collapsed because of digital music, and some of the labels weren't able to do the things that labels did for their artists anymore, basically pay them and also promote their album. And suddenly there was a need. Like the advertising became both A&R and also new music promotion. And so then everything changed very quickly. Question here: what is the best way for a music production company with catalogs of library music and custom to make a new connection with a music soup at an agency? I think we kind of covered this. I mean, it's thoughtful outreach and also really having the goods. If you got good music, I believe you will succeed.
Also, I feel like someone of like Kristen's role, or, like Fabian, if they're senior, they're probably not necessarily going to, I don't know, correct me if I'm wrong, Kristen, but I feel like you're not necessarily dealing with like stock music necessarily.
Oh, no, we are.
Like you do the searches as well?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I am actually I'm a one-woman department in a 600-person agency. So, wild. I'm
done that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, it's crazy. And, sometimes I'll push off stock searches to the producers who are working on campaigns because I don't have the bandwidth and it's not as, important. But yeah.
Or a lot of times those companies do have partners or people within those companies that'll do the polls for you. Mm-hmm. So you can partner with them and send them the brief and say, I've got 4 other searches going on at the same time. This is what this one is, and then you take that in. It's one more layer of filtering out hundreds of thousands worth of songs that you would have to sort through anyway. So it's nice to have that option.
Kind of on the back of that, this is perhaps related. What percentage of the new music you get do you actually listen to? So what percentage of the music that's sent your way do you think you listen to? I think it differs depending on how busy you are, of course, but what would you throw a number out there, you guys?
25%?
10%.
Maybe 25%? That's what I'm shooting for. If I have that amount of time, then yes.
Yeah.
Probably less than that for me, honestly. I wish I could. That's sort of the reason that we got into this, is because we enjoy listening to music and, would do it all day, every day if we could. But, sometimes the workload takes you away from it.
Yeah. I'm going to say for the last 6 months, for me, it's been 0, because I actually just checked. I have 1,685 unread emails in my inbox, which are all new music I need to listen to that I've just left in there. But I've been listening to music when I send out briefs. That's it, or I'll, luckily, or I'll sometimes like get a complex article or consequence of sound that I'll read a blog and I'll be like, okay, that's coming out. But it's hard.
Yeah. It is funny. I think right now it's really been impacted because of a lot more video chat, things where you can't have music on the background, and then the workload has increased. And then all the, everybody's different, but all the times when you just sort of sit back and listen to music, driving someplace, traveling, I just consumed like all the stuff I needed to get through. I build a playlist and get on the airplane and just go for it, you know? And a lot of that stuff has gone away. And so it's also a kind of a thing where, frankly, everything is really computer-based right now. It's hard. It used to be that I would sort of load up my iPhone or whatever and go and listen to stuff. And now everything's on the computer because I'm not doing that. And I don't want to be on a computer. You know, if I'm on a computer all the time. I know everybody else is, and you want to escape it at some point. So let's see here. A question about, have you ever hired a composer library off a cold call or email? You guys ever done that? Is it?
Yeah, I have. I mean, there's it was very like specifically targeted, being like, hey, I noticed that you guys do a lot of hip hop, a lot of modern classical music. Here's our library. And I was like, oh, they know exactly what we normally get hit up for. So here we go. But yeah.
Yeah, I'd say I do this all the time, mostly because there's just so much great music out there, and when people approach you and they have the good stuff, then sure. And some of my strongest relationships were built off of, you know, emails that came in, and I just said, wow, these guys are great. So yes, it does happen. It's not 100%.
I feel like in our industry, like we have to be open to the newness, you know, like we have to not just use the same people all the time, like, you know.
Correct. Yeah, absolutely. Especially, you know, I get a lot of artists that are coming from overseas and other places, and it is really interesting to hear their take on hip hop or, you know, German Latinx pop kind of stuff. It's, you know, it's cool and exciting to hear that. Let's see here. Questions for panelists. Are there concerns about licensing songs if they are already registered with a PRO, BMI, ASCAP, et cetera, assuming the songwriter's rights are clean and clear? Do you guys have concerns with licensing songs that might be registered?
No, we want them to be registered. Because if they're registered, it means the splits are identified and agreed upon, and that makes our job easier.
Yeah, I agree. It's great. And also it opens up a revenue stream that doesn't come out of my pocket or my client's pocket, but can come from the content suppliers like a YouTube or broadcast television. So you should definitely look into that. If you're able to get your music featured on something that's playing a lot, then you can get some fees, and it's also good money, mailbox money. So
also there's a couple really good like PRO registration companies out there. I know that we personally use Windfall, but there's Manage AD and there's Litchfield, and there's a lot of places that will register your music for you and just take a percentage of what you make. So they're actually really motivated to register it for you.
To collect too, I hope. Another question for you guys. Do you or others utilize any of the online platforms to search for a song or send briefs to without naming them specifically? So without naming the platforms, I guess. You guys use an online platform to submit briefs? Yeah. I don't either.
It's just direct relationships.
Yeah, that's kind of exactly it. I have experimented with these, and there are some great artists, but I really rely on my broad network of artists. I'm sure we all do, because of the relationships that are there.
There was one search I did with Disco where I put the brief in there and sent it to multiple parties that I knew would give like a lot. And so they uploaded it straight to Disco, and the brief was on Disco. Yes.
Yeah. I'm looking at doing that. I've not done that, but it's nice. It's a nice platform for that. Sorry, one second. There's a lot of funny comments in here. Do you find weekly email playlists from music houses helpful? If the music house or other content owner, rights holder sends you a weekly playlist?
I think weekly might be a little bit much. Like I tend to veer more towards like monthly. Mm-hmm. but just consistently monthly. And it can even just be a reminder that you're around.
Yeah, I think topical playlists, if there is something coming up, don't send me something for a Christmas campaign on the 22nd of December, but if it's a topical thing and it's within the wheelhouse and it happens to be coming up, that's good. Weekly does seem like a lot, but if you got really good stuff, sure.
I saw a question. Do you want me
Yeah, what did you see? Sorry, I'm well behind here. I've got 93 messages. I'm not.
It was like a few questions ago, but or like a few lines ago, but somebody asked about E&O insurance. I would say working with agencies, it's really important to have E&O insurance. But as somebody working, like for instance, with Found Objects, like as a company, you don't need E&O insurance for that. But there's obviously like a contract in place if you're a composer or something like that. But yeah, I was just going to say there are certain agencies that have incredibly high tiers for E&O insurance, which is ridiculous for independent people.
Yeah. I got another question here about ad agencies. A lot of ad agencies do not have a music supervisor. What other job titles at an ad agency might be responsible for placing music?
You can always reach out to business affairs people and executive producers. They're the contacts also to reach out to. But if you do have a contact, if there is a music supervisor and you're looking for another way in, I would recommend not reaching out to other people, because in like my case, that happens a lot. And all those people do is just forward me the email. So I'm getting them twice from the first person to send it and then forward it to me. So, just understand, like, again, going back to one of our first comments, understand that if someone's not getting back to you, it's not intentional, and don't take it personally. It's just, we're really busy.
Yeah. And to name some other specific titles, you've got, business affairs people, all the content producers, and some of these agencies have full production teams. So any post-production editors, that kind of thing, might also be responsible for pulling in music if you have an agency with a full production service. Question here about people not watching ads anymore, because they've got ad blockers or streaming services are able to skip the ads. Is that affecting what we all do as music supervisors in the industry? What do you guys think? Yeah.
Nothing whatsoever.
Yeah. and we've been through this several times with sort of like TiVo and other things that came up, and it was always like, oh, ad industry is going to go away, but they find ways to make it so that you have to watch the trailer, or legitimately on live marquee events, people want to watch the ads. It's part of the experience of the Super Bowl or something else. And I know that people try to avoid them too. So let's see here.
It's interesting too, right? Because you have to pay to not see the spots, but don't pay.
So there's a question here about emerging artist clients are now receiving proposed sync agency contracts which demand ownership percentages on masters and publishing, I guess, before any placement occurs. I am not particularly familiar with this. That sounds terrible. But do you guys know about this? With sync rep asking for ownership, not just percentages of the sync fees?
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah.
No.
Especially if you're a young artist or not super well known yet. Anybody that you work with, should be representing you most likely on a non-exclusive level, and they're only taking a percentage of the money that they bring in for you. not taking ownership.
Yeah, I would see that as a red flag, and I don't know why you'd want to do that. I mean, it depends on your goal, though. You know, if you're not trying to become an artist, but you're doing production music, maybe there's something in there that makes sense. But I'm not sure. I personally would advise against it.
Well, it's good to know that there are tons of companies out there that don't do that. So seeking them out would be important.
Yeah, I would point out there's a note here about an ad agency or somebody wanting 100% ownership, and there are different deals. If you're composing something for an agency or a brand and they're asking for a buyout, well, that is a separate thing. Then and they would have full ownership of it. Then say them coming to you and grabbing an existing song and demanding ownership. Either way, if you are comfortable with it and if they are paying, it might be a good deal for you. I don't know. It really depends on the specific scenario.
Yeah, just be really protective over your percentages. Like, don't just give that away.
Yeah, it's the thing that you have. So what are some good qualities to have to be a music supervisor, you guys? Come on, Kristen, what is it?
I mean, being a super boring, not bubbly human who likes to talk. I mean, it helps if you like music and you're social, although now being social is a little bit different. Liking all kinds of music really helps. You really can't be that person that's like, I'm really only listening to like EDM and like post-punk, whatever. It's like, no, you really like, sometimes you have to search for music and you might not love it, but that's okay. You have to figure out a way to like change your ears and still do your job, because a good music supervisor is somebody that has a good ear, right? You're able to hear things in a way that's authentic to whatever you're working on. And that's a skill, and it's a quality in people, but it's also definitely something that you can, cultivate with yourself.
And would you say that being a music supervisor has actually broadened your taste? Because certainly in my case, there's stuff I work in all the time I would never ever listen to, but now I have an affinity for it. So, Jennie?
I think certain people, like if you're one of those people that fall down like the rabbit hole, like this is a great role for you too. You're like, you just pick up on this one like obscure track and then you just explode and it's 4 hours later and you've like listened to the whole collection and seen the movie. That's great for this. I mentioned before, but honestly, somebody that is really open to having relationships and to maintaining those relationships, because, we're actually really a small industry, at least in advertising, and everybody knows you and everybody knows each other. And if you burn bridges, like we're going to know it. So I would say, savor and cultivate those relationships as much as you possibly can. And be flexible, like don't have an ego. I think that's a big one too. Because like sometimes we will be the babysitter. Sometimes we will be the mom. We will sometimes be like, you just have to wear a lot of different hats and transition every single day. There's a fire and you just have to be kind of ready and open to kind of put it out.
Mm-hmm. Fabian, anything to add?
I think that rabbit hole note extends not just to the type of music that you listen to, but the type of research that you would have to do, and just having that desire to do it. I can think back to when I started to fall in love with music and listening to artists that would cover other artists, and then finding out what the original version of that song sounded like, or who influenced those artists, what influenced them, and who do they tour with, who are their label mates, like all of that nerdy stuff really, I think suited this job really well, to the point where like if you're trying to, maybe something sparks an idea, like you hear a song and then you do fall down that rabbit hole and it sparks some new ideas for what you're trying to do. But also the ability to work with, understand who are the decision makers, how do you tend to, their sort of desires and tendencies, how do you manage expectations on all sides, kind of getting a feel for all of that stuff all plays a factor into this job. Yeah.
I think that's a big part of it too. And it's this unbelievably deep-seated love for music, and also the ability to pull other people in and be like, what's this? I think a lot of us that are on this panel have DJ'd. I DJ'd with Kristen at South by Southwest back when that was happening. And that love and that it's a compulsion really to just share music and to really do deep dives. And I like Jennie's comment early on about how you listen to music and put Post-its and things, labels on things saying like what it could be good for, and for me, that's always been a thing, from back in the day where I saw a few powerful movies like The Blues Brothers as a kid. Saw that in theaters because I'm very old. But the soundtrack to that was such an amazing journey, and to see it acted out and put in all these different things, it sparked something in me going like, there's a song for everything. And there literally is. And I'm always kind of trying to figure out what those are. So it's, be compulsive and organized. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.
Have a great night.